My fiancée and her family headed out on their big Christmas trip without me. There were 4 vehicles, 17 people, and a family group chat that somehow no longer included me or my 2 kids. I woke up to a house that felt completely abandoned. When I called my fiancée, her mom answered instead and casually said, "We thought you were just going to meet us there." I couldn't even think of anything to say. About 2 hours later, her sister accidentally sent me a screenshot that had clearly been meant for someone else. One message stood out immediately. "He's really not here. OMG, our plan worked." Asterisk asterisk. I didn't argue or ask questions. I simply replied, "Merry Christmas." Asterisk asterisk. Then I quietly canceled the $12,500 reservation I had paid for. After that, I moved on to step 2. At exactly 8:03 that morning, my phone exploded with activity. There were 101 missed calls and 1 voicemail that simply said, "Emergency." Asterisk asterisk. My name is Nathan, and I work as a mechanic. Most days, I spend my time with my arms buried inside engines, figuring out how to keep other people's vehicles running. At the end of the day, I usually try just as hard to keep my own life from falling apart. The morning my fiancée left me behind, though, my life didn't slowly break down the way a worn-out engine does. It shattered all at once. I woke up to a kind of silence that didn't belong inside my home. There wasn't a cartoon playing in the living room. I couldn't hear little feet running through the hallway. There was no smell of fresh coffee, no quiet buzzing from someone charging a phone on the kitchen counter. There was absolutely nothing. For a moment, I figured maybe I'd overslept. I thought everyone had already gotten up and headed out for a while. But then I noticed the coat hooks were empty. The shoe rack looked spotless, like someone had cleared it out completely. Even the Christmas stockings, mine, my son's, my daughter's, and my fiancée's, had disappeared from the fireplace mantel, as if none of us had ever lived there. When I walked into the kitchen, the table was completely empty. There wasn't a note saying they'd be back soon. No text message. No explanation of any kind. A knot formed in my stomach as I opened the front door. The driveway was completely empty too. Normally, even on a busy day, there's always something outside. A car, a neighbor's pickup, a delivery truck. Anything that reminds you life is still moving. That morning, it felt like the entire world had packed up and driven away without me. I grabbed my phone and opened our family group chat. The last message I'd seen the night before had come from my fiancée's mom. "Big trip tomorrow. Everybody be ready early." Asterisk asterisk. I'd answered with a thumbs up emoji and a quick, "We're in," because that's exactly what we'd been told to do. That's how things always worked with her family. Except when I searched for the conversation, it wasn't there anymore. It hadn't been muted. It wasn't archived. It had simply disappeared. I even searched for the word family, like somehow typing it into my phone would magically bring my place in that family back. Then I tapped my fiancée's name from my favorites and called. The phone rang, and rang, and rang. Then it went straight to voicemail. My hands started trembling, and it had nothing to do with the cold outside. Next, I called her mom. She answered before the 3rd ring, sounding cheerful enough that you'd think she'd been expecting my call. "Nathan, honey, we're already on the road." "What road?" My voice came out rougher than I expected. "Where is everybody?" There was a brief silence, the kind where someone is trying to decide exactly how much they should admit. "Oh, you mean you haven't started driving yet?" "Driving where?" Another pause followed. Then she laughed softly, almost like we were talking about some harmless misunderstanding over a side dish at dinner. "We thought you were meeting us there." "Meeting them there?" "There. 17 people. 4 cars. One big family vacation." And somehow I was the only person who'd never been told where there actually was. I looked around my empty house again. My kids' backpacks were gone. Their winter boots were gone. Even their toothbrushes were missing. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. "My kids aren't here," I said quietly. "Where are my children?" "Oh, sweetheart," her mom answered in that sugary voice people use when they're trying to calm someone down. "They're with us. They're perfectly fine. We didn't want to wake you. You looked exhausted." I couldn't respond. What exactly are you supposed to say when someone casually admits they took your children out of your house while you were asleep? I just stared at the wall until everything in front of me blurred. She kept talking, convinced enough words would somehow fix everything. "Everyone assumed you'd drive separately. You know how hectic these trips get. We had to leave early so we could make check-in." "Check-in?" I repeated. "Of course. Your fiancé handled the reservation." Everything's already taken care of. Put her on the phone. She's driving. Then tell her to pull over. She let out a long sigh. Not a worried sigh. An annoyed one. The kind that sounded well practiced. Nathan, please. Don't turn this into something dramatic. It's Christmas. We're just trying to enjoy a nice family vacation. Family. I didn't answer. Not because I agreed with her. Because I wasn't sure I could control what would come out of my mouth if I spoke. Her voice became quieter. Just meet us there, okay? Once you get here and see everyone having fun, you'll realize this was all a misunderstanding. I ended the call without saying goodbye. About 2 hours later, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from my fiancée's sister. She'd accidentally sent me a screenshot. At first, I couldn't even figure out what I was looking at. It was a group chat I'd never seen before. The title had a little Christmas tree emoji beside it, and my name wasn't anywhere in it. Then one message caught my eye. He's really not here. OMG. Our plan worked. Asterisk asterisk. I read those words over again. Plan. Worked. My hands suddenly felt ice cold while my knees felt weak. I didn't call anyone. I didn't yell. I didn't send a long angry message asking for answers. I didn't even ask why. I typed just 2 words. Merry Christmas. Then I opened my email, found the reservation confirmation, and quietly canceled the $12,500 booking that had been charged to my credit card. After that, it was time for step 2. At exactly 8:03, my phone lit up nonstop, almost like it was burning itself out. There were 101 missed calls. 1 voicemail. 2 words. Emergency. Asterisk asterisk. If you're wondering why I had access to cancel the reservation in the first place, it's because I was the one paying for most of their perfect little family vacation. That was the arrangement. Nobody ever came right out and said it, but everyone understood it. I met my fiancée, Claire, about 3 years earlier after she brought her car into my repair shop. The noise it was making sent a chill through me the second I heard it. Metal scraping against metal. The kind of sound every mechanic recognizes immediately, because it usually means an expensive repair is coming. When I showed her what was wrong, she looked like she was ready to cry. I don't have that kind of money, she admitted quietly. Is there any way you could? Looking back, I should have said no. I should have kept things professional. Instead, I noticed the kindness in her eyes. She had this gentle look that made me want to help her instead of sending her away. So I worked something out. I got the parts at cost. I let her pay me a little at a time until the bill was covered. The first time she came back with homemade cookies to thank me, she smiled like she'd just won the lottery. She never pressured me to talk about my past. She never acted like my kids were some kind of burden. When my daughter accidentally spilled juice on her sweater, she just laughed it off. When my son hid behind my leg, watching her with the cautious curiosity kids sometimes have around new adults, she didn't push him or make him uncomfortable. For a while, it honestly felt like we were building a real future together. But Claire didn't come into my life by herself. She came with an entire family. They traveled together, celebrated together, and practically moved as one giant group. To them, family wasn't just important. It was almost a religion. Every Sunday meant a family dinner. There were endless group chats. Cousins showed up at the house without warning. And family meetings usually ended with her mother talking like the mayor, while everyone else nodded along like loyal voters. At first, I actually found it kind of charming. It felt loud, messy, and full of love. But eventually, the little remarks started creeping in. Her sister, Brooke, had mastered the art of smiling while delivering an insult. She'd tilt her head, smile sweetly, and say, "Oh, Nathan." "Oh, Nathan," she'd say with that fake smile, "you're so hands-on." Claire really has a thing for the blue-collar look. Other times she'd laugh and add, "You're lucky Claire is so patient. Not many women would take on a man with that much baggage." By baggage, she wasn't talking about my past. She meant my children. Claire would quietly reach under the table and squeeze my hand, almost like she was apologizing without saying the words. But after a while, I realized apologies don't change a pattern that's been there all along. Her mother loved throwing around the word family. She used it the same way I use a wrench in the shop, to tighten things until everyone fell into line. Family vacations are important. Family doesn't question the plans. Family contributes. And by contributes, everyone knew exactly what she meant. Money. It always came down to money. Claire's family wasn't broke. They weren't struggling to survive. They simply had expensive tastes and an incredible talent for convincing other people to pay for them. They'd casually talk about cruises, ski resorts, or beachfront condos as if those things magically appeared when you wanted them badly enough. And somehow, my credit card always found its way into the conversation. At first, the requests sounded harmless. Could you cover the Airbnb deposit? Everyone will pay you back. Can you put the rental van on your card? You'll earn all the reward points. Would you mind booking the restaurant? You're so good with that stuff. I'm a mechanic. I like things that make sense. I like straightforward systems and clear agreements. But nothing with that family was ever straightforward. Everything stayed vague. The second I asked when I'd be getting my money back, Brooke would arch an eyebrow and laugh. Wow, formal much? Then she'd grin and say, you're marrying into this family, and you're already sending invoices? Every single time, Claire would quietly lean over and whisper, please, not tonight. So I'd swallow my frustration. Again and again. I kept doing it because I loved Claire. I also kept doing it because my kids had started saying her name with that comfortable warmth kids only use when they truly trust someone. I convinced myself this was just part of blending two families together. Sometimes you compromise. Sometimes you let things slide. Not long afterward, I got promoted at the repair shop. It wasn't some huge career breakthrough. I just had steadier hours, a better paycheck, and for the first time in a while, I felt like I could finally breathe. Unfortunately, that was also when her family's expectations got bigger. The requests stopped sounding like favors. Instead of, could you help us out? It became, just cover this. Instead of asking, they'd assume, you've got it. You're the responsible one. Without even realizing it, Claire became the bridge they used to reach my wallet. Whenever something came up, she'd automatically say, Nathan can handle it. I honestly don't know whether she couldn't see what was happening or simply didn't want to. I tried bringing it up more than once. One evening, while we stood at the sink washing dishes together, I finally said, your mom treats me like I'm an ATM. And Brooke keeps talking about my kids like there's some kind of problem. Claire frowned while rinsing a plate, bubbles covering her hands. They're just intense, she said. That's how they are. That's how they are. I repeated, how much longer am I supposed to just accept that? Instead of answering, she leaned over and kissed my cheek. We'll be married soon, she whispered. It'll calm down after that. It never calmed down. If anything, it got worse. Christmas was supposed to be different. It was supposed to be the holiday where my kids finally felt like they completely belonged. I'd been putting money aside for months. I bought everyone gifts. I arranged time off from work. I even repaired Claire's mom's old SUV without charging her a dime after she casually mentioned it wasn't running properly. I knew exactly what she was really asking. She wanted it fixed before the family trip. That trip became the centerpiece of everyone's Christmas. Claire couldn't stop talking about it. We'll have 4 cars, she said excitedly. 17 people. It'll be like one big caravan. And we're included? I asked. Of course we are, she answered immediately. You, me, and the kids. It'll be amazing. I believed her, mostly because I wanted to. The night before everyone left, Claire rushed around the house packing bags like she was racing against a clock only she could see. Before going to bed, I tucked my son and daughter in. I kissed each of them on the forehead. Tomorrow we're going on an adventure, I told them. My son smiled into his pillow. Do you think there'll be snow? Probably, I answered. And definitely some hot chocolate. My daughter let out a sleepy yawn. Will Claire's mom be nice? That question landed harder than she probably realized. I gently brushed her hair away from her face. We're going to have fun, I told her carefully. And if somebody isn't nice, I'll handle it. I fell asleep with that promise sitting heavily in my chest. Then I woke up to an empty house, and later received a screenshot proving they'd planned the whole thing from the beginning. The very first voicemail, marked emergency, came from Claire. Her voice sounded tight and shaky, like she was barely holding herself together. Nathan, please call me back. Something happened. We need you. It's an emergency. I didn't return the call. Not right away. Instead, I sat alone at my kitchen table, staring at the patterns in the wood while trying to take slow breaths. It felt like my lungs had outgrown my ribs. Emergency. Funny how nobody seemed to think it was an emergency when they took my children out of my house while I slept and left me behind without a word. The calls kept coming. First Brooke, then Claire's mother, then numbers I didn't even recognize. I figured the cousins had probably started borrowing each other's phones. Somewhere around the 30th call, I finally answered. It was Claire's mom. Nathan, she snapped, and every ounce of sweetness had disappeared from her voice. What did you do? I had to pull the phone away from my ear for a second. She was loud enough to wake the dead. What I did, I answered calmly, was cancel a reservation that I paid for. She sucked in a sharp breath. You can't do that. I already did. Her anger exploded. You ruined Christmas. No, I replied. You ruined trust. She suddenly went quiet. Not because she'd understood. She was simply choosing her next tactic. Then came the guilt. It always came back to guilt. The children are devastated, she said, her voice suddenly trembling. They don't understand why you'd do something like this. My children? I asked. There was a pause. She wasn't talking about my kids. She meant her own grandchildren through marriage. The same children she loved showing off on social media whenever it made her look like the perfect grandmother. Where are my kids right now? I asked. They're safe, she answered sharply. They're with us. With the same people who deliberately planned to leave me behind, I said. That's comforting. Her voice turned into a hiss. Nathan, you need to fix this immediately. You're stranded? Where exactly are you stranded? Another silence. Then, in a much quieter voice, she admitted it. The hotel wouldn't let us check in. The reservation is gone, and the backup place is completely booked. There's nowhere for us to stay. I pictured the whole scene in my head. 4 cars, 17 people, standing in a hotel parking lot with suitcases piled around them, cold air hanging in front of their faces, matching Christmas sweaters suddenly looking ridiculous. Oddly enough, I didn't feel satisfied. I felt something much clearer than that. I felt certainty. This hadn't been an accident. It was simply the result of the plan they had chosen. Her voice softened again. We have the children. They're exhausted. They're hungry. Please, just book us something. Anything. We'll pay you back. I almost laughed out loud. They'd pay me back? These were the same people who had treated my credit card like community property for years. No, I said. Her tone instantly hardened. Excuse me. No, I repeated. I'm not paying for another reservation. And I'm not coming anywhere until someone explains why my fiancé took my children out of my house without waking me. Stop making everything about yourself, she snapped. I took a slow breath. It literally is about me. She stumbled over her words. You were never. I cut her off before she could finish. Your other daughter accidentally sent me a screenshot. It says your plan worked. Silence. Not denial. Not outrage. Just silence. Then I heard someone yelling in the background. Who told him? A second later. The call disconnected. For the next 5 minutes, the phone stopped ringing altogether. A few minutes later, Claire called again. This time, I answered. Nathan, she whispered, speaking so quietly it sounded like she was afraid someone nearby might overhear her. Please, just listen. I'm listening, I replied. The calmness in my own voice caught me off guard. I sounded almost gentle, like I was explaining to a customer that their engine was too far gone to repair. We didn't mean for it to happen like this, she rushed out. Brooke was joking. She's always dramatic. Your sister wrote. Our plan worked. I reminded her. So tell me, Claire, what plan? She took a shaky breath. It was supposed to make things easier. Easier for who? For everyone, she answered, and I could hear her crying now. My mom thinks. She hesitated. She thinks the kids make everything more complicated. Another pause. And she thinks you do too. There it was. Maybe not every detail, but it was the truth at the center of everything. So let me get this straight, I said slowly. Your family wanted a vacation without me, and the solution was to take my children and leave me asleep in an empty house. She broke into quiet sobs. I told them it was wrong, she cried. I really did. I swear. But you still went along with it. She couldn't answer. I loved you, I said, feeling my throat tighten around those words. Truth is, I still do. But you put my children into a car with people who don't even respect their father. They're safe, she insisted. They're with family. No, I answered softly. They're with your family. Silence settled between us again. Finally, she whispered, Please, we just need somewhere to stay. It's freezing. The kids. That part hit me hard. I pictured my son's dry, cracked lips from the cold. I imagined my daughter's exhausted face after hours of listening to adults argue. My chest tightened. That's why I'm calling a lawyer, I told her. What? She gasped. And if you don't tell me exactly where you are, I continued, I'll also be calling the police. Her breathing caught. You took my children out of my home without my permission while I was asleep. And somehow you expect me to fix your hotel problem like I'm roadside assistance. Nathan, don't do this. I'm already doing it. Then I ended the call. Afterward, I opened my messages and sent Brooke the exact screenshot she'd accidentally sent me earlier. I didn't write a single word, just the screenshot. Almost immediately, the typing bubbles appeared, then disappeared, then came back again. A second later, she called. I answered and put the phone on speaker. If this conversation was going to turn into a fight, I wasn't interested in pretending otherwise. You're out of your mind. Brooke snapped. There are children here. I know, I replied calmly. My children. You're punishing them. No, I corrected her. I'm punishing you. She laughed. It was sharp, fake, and full of spite. Oh, please. You would have shown up late anyway. You're always working, always exhausted, always acting like your life is harder than everybody else's. We wanted one trip where Claire didn't have to drag you around like. Like what? I interrupted. She never finished the sentence. She didn't need to. I already knew what she'd been about to say. In the background, I heard Claire desperately saying, Brooke, stop. Brooke ignored her completely. Claire deserves a real family experience, she said. Not your situation, my situation, meaning my children, meaning my life. Something inside me clicked into place, like tightening the final bolt on an engine after everything finally lined up. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to tell me exactly where my kids are. She scoffed. Or what? Or I'll report everything. And I'll ask the court for emergency custody. I heard scrambling on the other end, like someone had grabbed the phone away from her. Claire came back on the line. She sounded terrified. Nathan, please don't. Please, just come here. We'll talk. We'll fix everything. I'm not coming, I answered. But I am fixing it. I never explained what step 2 actually was. I simply hung up. People usually imagine revenge as something loud. They picture screaming, slamming doors, throwing things, dramatic speeches. Mine wasn't like that. Mine was paperwork. At 9:30 that morning, I called my cousin, who works in family law, and asked if he could recommend an attorney. By 10:15, I was already speaking with one. At exactly 11 o'clock, I filed paperwork requesting a temporary emergency order. Nothing dramatic. Nothing exaggerated. Just a documented concern stating that my children had been removed from my home without my knowledge or consent and were being kept away from me. After that, I called the non-emergency police line. Once Claire finally realized I wasn't bluffing, she texted me their location. I asked the police to perform a welfare check. That's the thing about families obsessed with control. They always assume you'll eventually give in. They expect you'll pay. They think you'll avoid conflict at any cost if it means everyone can keep smiling for the family photos. But I spend my days repairing machines that break because people ignored obvious warning signs. I don't ignore warning signs anymore. Later, one of the officers called me back. His voice stayed calm and professional. Your children are safe, he said. They're with their mother and several relatives at a highway rest stop. There seems to be some tension. Tension, I repeated. He hesitated before answering. It appears there's an ongoing disagreement over the lodging and finances. The adults have been arguing. The children seem upset. My stomach twisted. Can I speak to them? There was another brief pause. The mother has agreed to let them talk with you. A few seconds later, I heard my daughter's small voice. Daddy. My throat immediately tightened. Hey, sweetheart. Are you okay? Yeah, she whispered. But Claire's mom keeps yelling. Then my son took the phone. Dad, where are you? Why aren't you here? I'm at home, I answered. And I'm coming to get you. He sniffled. Did we do something wrong? No, I answered without hesitation. You didn't do anything wrong. None of this is your fault. Then I heard Claire trying to speak again. Nathan, please. I interrupted her. Not angrily, just firmly. I'm coming for my children. Not for you. Not for your family. For my kids. Then I lowered my voice. Claire, you have one chance to do the right thing. Bring them home peacefully. I heard her catch her breath. My mom. I don't care about your mom. The words came out before I could soften them. And honestly, they felt like ripping off a bandage that had been stuck on far too long. I care about my children. About 2 hours later, I pulled into the rest stop. My truck hummed steadily beneath me. At that moment, it felt like the only dependable thing left in my life. I spotted them standing near a vending machine. Claire had both kids wrapped in her arms, almost like she was trying to prove she still belonged in the picture. The second her mother noticed me, her face twisted with anger. Brooke's confidence disappeared as her eyes went wide. Claire looked completely different. She reminded me of someone standing on the edge of a bridge, only now realizing the fall below was real. "You embarrassed all of us," her mother hissed as I walked toward them. I didn't even acknowledge her. Instead, I knelt down in front of my son and daughter. "Go grab your jackets," I said quietly. "We're going home." My daughter threw her arms around me, so tightly it felt like she'd been holding herself together all morning. My son reached for my sleeve. His hands were shaking. Claire stepped toward me. "Nathan, please, just talk to me." I slowly stood back up. "I will. With our lawyers present." She looked stunned. "Lawyers?" "Over one misunderstanding." For the first time since arriving, I looked directly into her eyes. "A misunderstanding," I said, "is forgetting how someone takes their coffee. It isn't removing them from the family group chat and taking their children before sunrise." Out of the corner of my eye, I heard Brooke let out a scoff, trying to recover the confidence she'd lost. "Oh my God," Brooke scoffed. "You're such a drama king." Without saying a word, I raised my phone so everyone could see the screen. The screenshot glowed between us. I read the message out loud. "Our plan worked. Asterisk asterisk." The color disappeared from Brooke's face. Her mother's mouth opened, closed, then opened again, but nothing came out. Beside them, Claire whispered, "Brooke." I turned to her. My voice stayed calm. "You were going to marry me," I said quietly. "And you stood by while they treated me like I was nothing more than a guest in my own life." Tears rolled down her face. I didn't know how to stop them. "That's exactly the problem," I answered. "You didn't stop them. You became part of it." I opened the truck door and helped my kids climb inside. As I buckled their seat belts, I noticed something. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Before getting into the driver's seat, I looked back one last time. "Merry Christmas." I didn't say it with anger. I didn't say it kindly, either. I simply meant it as the end of the conversation. Then I drove away. The first week afterward felt strange. It was like escaping a burning building only to realize the smoke still clung to your clothes no matter how far you'd walked. Claire's family tried every approach they could think of. Her mother called me crying. When that didn't work, she started yelling. Later she acted as if she'd never raised her voice at all. Brooke tried something different. She wrapped insults in fake concern. "You're really going to traumatize those kids over one vacation?" I never answered. 2 days later, Claire came to my house. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and her hands shook as she stood on my porch. "I'm sorry," she whispered. For one brief moment, I wanted nothing more than to pull her into a hug. I wanted to believe every word she was saying. Then I felt my son quietly step behind me. He peeked around my leg, watching her with the same cautious look he'd given strangers when he wasn't sure whether they were safe. My daughter stayed on the couch. She didn't even get up. That was the moment everything finally became clear. Love isn't enough when it comes at the cost of your children's sense of security. "I'm not trying to punish you," I told Claire. "I'm protecting them." She lowered her head as though the words had physically struck her. "I'll do anything," she said. "I'll go to therapy. I'll set boundaries. I'll cut my mom out of my life. Whatever you need." I looked down at her empty hands. There were no actions, no proof, no real change, only promises. "Then start by telling everyone the truth," I said. She swallowed hard. "My mom will." "I don't care about your mom. Tell everyone you lied. Tell them you took my children out of the house while I was asleep. Tell them it was planned." Her face collapsed with emotion. She turned around and left. She never promised she'd do it. That silence told me everything I needed to know. Over the following weeks, my home became quieter than it had been in years. Not lonely, peaceful. My kids and I built new routines together. Saturday mornings became pancake mornings. Movie nights became a tradition. I'd sit beside my daughter at the kitchen table helping her practice spelling while my son lined up his toy cars in perfectly straight rows across the floor. At work, I found myself focusing better than I had in a long time. Working on engines was simple. Every problem had a cause. Every repair followed a logical process. People were different. People always tried rewriting the instruction manual after they'd already wrecked the machine. With my lawyer's help, we put formal custody arrangements in place. Nothing dramatic. Just clear expectations. Stability. A boundary that couldn't be ignored. Claire kept calling. Sometimes she'd leave voicemail messages that sounded like she was trying to stay strong. I miss you. I miss the kids. I'm sorry. I never blocked her number. Not because I hoped she'd come back. Because I wanted every message documented. As for her family, they discovered pretty quickly what happened once the responsible person stopped financing their dreams. Word traveled. Apparently, that first night they ended up squeezing 17 people into 2 tiny motel rooms. The kind of place that smells like worn-out carpet and bad decisions. I also heard Claire's mom had no choice but to put everything on her own credit card. She nearly maxed it out. Later I found out Brooke blamed Claire for letting me cancel the reservation. Then, a few weeks after Christmas, one of their cousins, who happened to work at a bank, told me something else. You know Claire's mom applied for a loan? They turned her down. I didn't celebrate hearing that. I didn't feel victorious. What I felt was validated. People who build their lives on someone else's generosity love calling it love. The moment that generosity disappears, they suddenly call it cruelty. On New Year's Day, I took my kids to a hill just outside town. From there you could see the entire city glowing beneath the night sky. We filled a thermos with hot chocolate, wrapped ourselves in blankets, and sat together in the back of my truck. My son rested his head against my shoulder. After sitting quietly for a while, he asked, "Are we still a family?" The question hit me just as deeply as my daughters had a few weeks earlier. Yes, I answered without hesitation. We absolutely are. But, Claire? My daughter asked softly. I let out a slow breath. Claire made choices. And those choices hurt us. That doesn't mean we stop deserving love. It just means we have to choose people who know how to love us the right way. The wind tugged gently at the edge of my blanket while the city lights flickered below us like thousands of tiny promises. I thought back to that silent house, the missing family group chat, the screenshot. Our plan worked. They were right. For a little while, their plan did work. It showed me exactly what they believed, that I was optional, that my children were little more than accessories, that my wallet mattered more than my presence, that my place in the family could be negotiated. But their plan accomplished something else too. It finally woke me up, not from sleep, from a pattern I'd ignored for far too long. I'm a mechanic. I know exactly what happens when someone ignores the warning light on a dashboard. The engine doesn't magically forgive you because it's Christmas. Eventually, it breaks. Then you have 2 choices. Repair it correctly, or stop driving it altogether. That night, as I looked at my sons and daughters' faces lit by the glow of the city below, I made myself one quiet promise. It wasn't the kind of promise anyone applauds. It didn't need witnesses. I'll never let anyone make us feel like we don't belong again. My son took another sip of hot chocolate and nodded in a way that made him seem older than any child should have to be. My daughter simply whispered, "Okay." For the first time in a very long while, something inside me finally settled. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't anger. It was peace. I wasn't their bank account anymore. I wasn't their emergency backup plan. I was simply Nathan, a father, a mechanic, and a man who finally understood that love without respect is nothing more than another debt waiting to be collected.